What is happening, guys? Welcome back. So in the last episode we revealed that we've been out and bought ourselves a 6N2 Polo GTI, which we harvested for the engine. We're a bit deflated down in the last episode as the compression was low on cylinder 3. Now, a lot of you guys commented saying that I should have put a little bit of oil in because I thought it was the rings. That would have sealed the rings and given us a better compression to tell us whether they were broken or not. But a lot of you are also saying that you think it could be a sticking valve. So yeah, hopefully we can salvage the engine. Well, we will salvage the engine. We're going to have to do something with it. We can't leave it as it is. Still fair few parts of it available. So if you're after anything, hit me up because we want to try and recoup some money and get some of that gone. But in this episode, we're going to be back on with the shell of the Polo. And we want to start off getting this car rolling. And yeah, we want to dry build the car basically. So I want to get the suspension on. We've got a throttle pedal to mount, to make and fit, get all the steering, everything back on, brake master cylinder back on. We're going to run all the wiring loom, want to get the dash in, just because this car came to us in bits. We just want to make sure that we've got everything's going to work, everything's going to be right. So started yesterday on making a bracket for, believe it or not, that little box just there, with that bit on, that is the throttle pedal. So the 6N2 is a fly-by-wire throttle, and the guy that's doing the loom, we chatted to him and he showed us how he mounted his throttle. I think it's like a potentiometer thing. He showed us how he mounted that, and what we're going to do is make a bracket to mount it up here, and we're going to use the original pedal because the mount, this is the original cable from the Mark II Polo, which has got a rubber bit that pushes on, and this here is basically the exact same way that the cable mounts on to the pedal. So we're going to build a bracket for that to go on, and then we can plug the cable in that goes off to the engine and it will work. So let's just make a start, dig some stuff out, and we'll make a start, get the steering rack and everything mounted on, get the brake servo and the brake cylinder and everything mounted on, and we'll start getting this shell dry built so we can decide what we're cutting off, what we're smoothing, what else we need to do. Right, well, it's taken all morning. I think it's about 2 o'clock now, but we have now got a drive-by-wire throttle pedal in and working. So I'll try and show you what I've done. So looking at that lot, the green sticker up there, that is the throttle, if you like. It's the potentiometer or whatever you call it. That is the bit that pulls down, turns something inside, sends a signal through that plug, which is what your throttle is. So all I have done is basically made that plate, which looks a little something like this. This was a test one that I was playing in different orientations, but it basically looks like that. Just behind it there, I've welded this plate here because there's a void in the back of this pedal assembly. I've welded a plate there and then that plate onto the end to create the corner and give it a bit of strength. And then we've bolted, obviously those two holes there and then that one are threaded. That potentiometer, we'll call it potentiometer, that bolts into. And then the throttle pedal, this here, you see this little kink in it here, this normally kinks and comes back. It goes 180 degrees and comes back here, so that bobbles normally this end. I basically sat it in the vise and heated it up with the blowtorch. We straightened that out to get so that it threw it over there into the area where we wanted this to be. Otherwise we've got to try and come over where the steering column was. And I've also then heated up this corner here and basically pulled that out a little bit like that to straighten that out because it leant back. So I've straightened that out a bit, and now we've got full, it opens the throttle completely. That has got full play from, there's no tension on it there, and then that is full throttle, and that opened all the way. Right, I was playing with the pedal when we just finished filming that bit, and there was a bit of flex in it that I wasn't too happy with, so I've taken it back off, and we've added a bit of strengthening to it, and I thought I'd show you it while it's off the car. So this is the assembly: brake pedal, clutch pedal, We welded this plate here on, as on the back of it, you can see the new metal, that's through there, there's nothing there. So we've welded that piece of metal on for us to then be able to weld the upstand on, which is that piece of metal there. I had to put a return on it, and then we ended up butting that all the way up to the side of it. So you could probably do away with that piece of metal and just have the back plate, the side plate, and then I've just added these strengthening pieces to try and take the flex out of it, and then that is the throttle cable potentiometer or whatever it is mounted onto it, so it's all nice and strong. So I'm pretty happy now. That can all go back in the car, and hopefully we're not going to have to take it out again until we come around to wanting to paint it. So we'll call that one a success, and we can move on to the next thing. So I think what we want to do now is get the chassis rolling, so then we can pull it out and we can get nicely around everywhere to get the wiring loom in. So in a previous episode, I showed you that Matt from Mark II Spares had supplied us with some Mark I Golf front hubs, because my plan was we were going to convert it to that because it brings the track width in by 10mm. But the coilovers I've got don't go low enough, nowhere near low enough. And looking for a set of low coilovers for the Mark I Golf, you're talking £1,000 for something half decent. So what we've decided to do, and I've done a bit of chatting to a few people, and there's a car that I'm obsessed with that was featured in PVW in 2015. We found the article, we've read what they did, and what they used, which some of you are probably not going to like, is TA Technics coilovers, and they used a £300 shortened spring on the front. So that's basically what we're going to do. Now, for the purposes of it at the moment, I think I'm going to leave the helper spring in to just get everything on the car to see where it sits, and then we can take the helper out and work it from there. We are also going to be running these Project Silver Project, whatever they are, camber adjustable top mounts to just give us a bit of movement on the camber, and they just look nice in the engine bay. They look nicer than the original ones. So let's get those built. I've already got one done with the bearing in, which will be ready to go on the car. So we need to get the bearing in the other one. We'll get them mounted on. We need to take the rear end to pieces to put the springs in. Let's get it done and hopefully be able to get it sat on the floor. Right, so next day, shocks and everything are all on, and I never thought I'd say this, but the rear is a little bit too low. We've not got enough travel and movement in the suspension, so the rear needs to come up a little bit, which we just need to adjust, hopefully just adjust the coilovers, and that will be okay. The front we've got on, and if you go around this side, we're sitting, it's probably, again, a touch too low. The wheel's forward in it as well. It's not all tight under there. It's a little bit low on where we want it to be, but it's not far off. We probably want to come up like an inch, and that's it. But the problem we've got, so we started off leaving the helper springs in, miles too high. Then we took the helper spring out and left the spring in, miles too high. So now we've got no spring in whatsoever, and the top of the shock body and the top mount are touching. So we've got absolutely no suspension travel whatsoever, but the wheel is not a million miles away from where we want it to be. So we've got a bit of a problem. I know that weight in the engine bay with the engine will help the suspension with the springs on. I'm not stupid, I'm not ignoring that. But there was 3 of us stood in the engine bay yesterday, and it hardly moved. The suspension was really stiff, so it wasn't going to drop it enough to make it sit where we wanted it to. So I've spent the morning trying to get my head around what we're going to do to sort the front suspension out, and I'm not come up with anything yet. So I think we're just going to leave that, and we'll have to sleep on that for a few days and try and work out what we're going to do, which means we need to move on to do something else. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to try and get the wiring loom all in, get everything where it needs to go so we can work out where it's supposed to route and then work out where we want to route it. We need to then take all the engine side of it out and deconstruct the loom, which is not going to be a fun job, but we need to do it, so let's get on with it. Right, we've made a start and got the wiring loom in. So we've got the wiring to where the headlights want to be. We've got various different things plugged in. Washer bottle, which we're going to relocate, so we'll trace them wires and extend them. Fuse board, factory goes there in the engine bay. We're going to move that, so we need to work out how to move that. Clocks are plugged in. All the plugs down here are plugged in. Whatever we can plug in is basically plugged in. We've pulled them all the way to the back as well. So sat and cut all the sheathing off that's from factory, because it's really hard, really rigid plastic, and you just can't get the loom to go where you want, what you want to do. So we'll re-loom tape all of that lot. That's pretty much all I can do with that until we get the loom for the engine back from the guy that's basically simplifying it down so the engine will run. And then we can plug everything in, and then we can start taking out what we don't need from there. So what we're going to do now is move on to getting the engine mounted into the chassis so that we know it's all going to work, and then we can start, well, carry on from there. So to fit the engine in, we're going to be using the 6N2 gearbox as well. And for that, we needed some engine mounts. So the driver side engine mount is this here, which came with the car. We've got that piece that bolts to the block. This piece is the bit that goes into the chassis leg that sits onto. You've then got the rear gearbox mount, which looks like this. That bit bolts to the gearbox, this bit bolts to the engine. And then we had to get hold of the holy grail of gearbox mounts, which is a 5-speed gearbox mount that bolts onto there. So with all these parts we've acquired, that should bolt directly into the car and not give us any problems. We've also got a 5-speed, I believe it is, anti-roll bar. We've got some little bits that hold the dashboard in, and we've also got the wiper motor, because we didn't have a wiper motor that came with the car, we couldn't find it. I want to say a massive thank you to the guys from Polo-r-us on eBay. I had the body cuts from them, and then rang up the other day, said needed some engine mounts and bits and pieces, and we drove over again yesterday to pick all of these bits up, which mean that we can now get the engine bolted in. So a massive thanks to those guys. Yeah, if you need any Polo parts, hit them up. He went round and showed me everywhere he's got, and the stuff he's got: Polo parts, Corrado parts, Sirocco parts. He's got stuff everywhere. So if you need anything, hit them up. I'll put a link in the description to their eBay store. Yeah, great guys, and they've got a lot of stuff that if you need, they've got it. So let's get on and try and get this engine mounted into this shell. So we have made some great progress. The engine is mounted in the bay, super simple. It mounts on using all of the original mounts, so a 5-speed gearbox mount, an original rear gearbox mount, and then the original left-hand side engine mount. There is only the 2 top bolts in that engine mount. The bottom bolt, we need to get a plate, which basically bolts on in place of that big bit of aluminium down there. So we've only used those top 2 bolts. We get a plate that bolts into the bottom 2 bolts, and there's another hole here that picks up the 3rd mount for that side that we need to get on order. But it's in, it's looking pretty good. We've got a bit of clearance around for that, which should be okay. We're going to have to shorten or move this out of the way or modify the bonnet, and we might have to modify the bonnet ever so slightly for this. I tried it on and it is very, very, very close. So drive shafts, we've got the drive shafts on. So this side is the standard drive shaft from the original car, from a Mark II Polo. That one's a standard one. This side we've got, I've just dropped the standard one in just to see if it fitted and how it fitted. I've spoken to the guy that's doing the loom, and he said that we need to order a 729mm one, otherwise it will damage the gearbox. So we've ordered a 729mm one, which I think should be here today, so we can get that on. But we'll take a look in the air and I'll show you from underneath. So looking from underneath, another thing we've got on is the 5-speed, I believe it is, anti-roll bar. We've got some, we're going to order some blocks for that, which basically space it down. I think they correct the caster when you lower it, although it's hitting that exhaust manifold, so I'm not 100% sure that they're actually going to work with it. We might have to modify the exhaust, but that shouldn't really be a big deal. Another issue we've got is, if you can see up here, the pulley for the auxiliary belt is literally on the chassis leg. So yeah, that's not going to work. We're going to have to do something with that. Now, the guy that done the engine loom, he says he's machined that and the last rib off the original pulley. So we might try and get that sorted out as well. Rear engine mount is that one. So I've had to modify the gearbox slightly. You can see that new bit of casting there. There's basically an angled piece that sticks out probably 10 or 15 mil from there and comes down to nothing. We had to square that off back to this big bit of casting on the gearbox. It's not weakened the gearbox, it's not damaged the gearbox anyway. We've just modified it so this bracket fits on. This then mounts on into the original hole. And I've then also, this is the 4-speed Mark II, gear selector. And we've managed to get that mounted up and working on the GTI gearbox, which basically we undo that bolt there, and this whole piece, except for that silver rod, this whole piece is from the Mark II. It slides on, does up. There's a clamp missing off of here to stop the side-to-side movement in that rod. And I think I need to get a 5-speed one for inside the car to give us the correct sort of movement inside of it. But it's on, it's in. Drive shaft on. We need to mark them whether we need to, I think we need to modify the chassis legs for those. So unfortunately in this episode, we're not going to be getting the engine loom in. The guy that's doing it is having trouble with couriers and deliveries and stuff not turning up. You know what it's like when you've got stuff being delivered, it's painful. So yeah, we've got the engine in. We've got the suspension on, it rolls. We need to do something with the suspension. I'm not quite sure what, but I'm sure we'll work something out with it. So yeah, that's that one done then, guys. In the next one, I think we're gonna get as much of the stuff that we've physically got for the car on it. So interior seats, everything like that. Just so we know what we've got, I can then send a list over to our friends at Polo-r-us of what we need to get it going. So it feels good to know that the engine is in and mounted and is essentially going to work. I mean, I know people have already done this conversion, but yeah, when you're doing it, it always is a bit of a worry to know that what you're going to do is actually going to work. Hopefully we've managed to source a top fill radiator that will mean that we can do away with the header tank. So all that will be in the engine bay will be the brake master cylinder, the engine gearbox itself, and the radiator at the front, obviously all cleaned up, smoothed out bay, this bit removed, should look nice and trick. So now we've got all that lot done, shall we do a bit of a roundup as to what we've spent in this episode? So the part that you all seem to really be enjoying is keeping a tab on what money we've spent. I'm not enjoying it that much because it's stressing me out, because I don't normally keep a tab on it, and it's stressing me out. I think it's pretty safe to say now we're not going to be doing this for £5 grand. Me being me, I get carried away and want to do things and go more in depth into things than we really should do. But anyway, let's get on. So first thing that we spent was on the coilovers. So coilovers, Now, the coilovers themselves were £376 and 82 pence delivered, but we'd got import as well because EU, which was £82.56, which was a nice little added bonus when they came in. Wheel bearings were, my terrible handwriting, wheel bearings were £37 and 38 pence. And then all the parts that we had from Polo-r-us, they very, very kindly donated them to the build. Love the channel, love what we're doing, like that we're trying to keep these on the road and get these going and get people interested in them again. So they've donated the parts, which is very, very appreciated. We're going to put a rough figure in for what they would have been. So mounts, if we say, I think 50 quid should about cover it. So that's that, meaning that the total spend so far is £3,263 and 37 pence, leaving £1,736 and 63 pence, which really, really isn't a lot of money. Still got an exhaust to build, which is going to be, we're going to do it ourselves, but it's going to be a couple of £100. We've got seats to buy, fabric to buy, brake lines, fuel lines, powder coating, brake. Oh, yeah, it's going to get out of hand. Anyway, hours, I think we've done about another 40 hours. So we're up to 182 hours so far. So yeah, there's a roundup. That's what we've spent. That's what we've got left to spend. I think we can say that it isn't going to be a £5 budget build. But with that said, I think we'd rather do things properly, make it look nice. It is definitely heading in the right direction, and I cannot wait to get out in it with that little engine in. Right, hopefully you've enjoyed this one, guys. In the next one, we're going to, I don't know, we'll be doing something with it, and we'll carry on. So, until next time, guys, enjoy.